YBTG Gamer fans? It's me, the Mattman, and I'm here with another list for you. With, of course, a guest from the channel. And what are we talking about today? Today, we're talking about games that we remember from our childhoods or our young teenage years. We're talking about games that give us all those warm and fuzzy feelings inside. Those are the games that we're talking about today. So without further ado, let's get into some games that we're nostalgia for. How can we talk about nostalgic games without talking about Spider-Man 2? I mean, this is a game that I played so much as a kid. You wouldn't believe how much I played it. Even with Tobey Maguire's poor voice acting performance, I loved the game. I loved swinging around the city, saving the pedestrians. Even saving that kid's balloon from floating away. I had so much fun doing that. But you know what the funnest part of that game was that I had in it? It was the missions where you would try and do an assignment for the Daily Bugle, because during those missions, you would just have free reign to swing around the city, and there wouldn't be any little side quests popping up. It was just a free, no crimes, no nothing. You could just swing around the city and be unbothered. And I made so much of my own fun. That's an ability that I've lost playing games. I can't just make my own fun anymore. Like, I would swing around to the island halfway across the bridge, go to the top of the smokestacks, and just imagine that other Marvel characters were like there hanging onto the edge of the smokestack, and I would be like, "Oh, I'm saving you, and I'm going to swing you back to the city." And I would just do that for hours, and it was honestly the best part of the game for me. And of course, there's the pizza missions. You can never forget those pizza missions with that amazing delivery music. You know what I'm talking about. And of course, can't talk about Spider-Man 2 without mentioning its spectacular web-slinging system that was designed by just one man.
You made it, and on time. Hey, good job.
For me, you can't talk about nostalgic without talking about The Hobbit. Man, this movie adaptation of a game, that didn't make sense. We're sticking with it. You follow Bilbo Baggins as he travels through multiple journeys. Oh man, the combat. It's a action platformer that had a pretty small development team. But man, what a game. From the rudimentary puzzles that you complete, I distinctly remember the stealth portion, trying to get past the trolls very early on in the game. Unbelievable. And Smog. How can you forget about Smog? The noise meter, trying to keep down, walking upon all those gold coins, worrying that the moment you make too much noise, a dragon is going to roast you alive. Or how about spiders? Do you like spiders?
You know, you would think I like spiders, being a big fan of Spider-Man, but no, I am horribly, horribly arachnophobic.
Well, that's unfortunate, because one of the key sections of The Hobbit is the Mirkwood Forest. Forest where at the end of the level you have to fight the 3 spider sisters. And there's spiders everywhere, my friend.
Well,
I think one of the big nostalgic moments for me in this game was the fact that this is one of the very few games that me and my parents played together. And it was a unique concept in which, you know, there were certain sections I just couldn't beat, but my mom or my dad could. And so it almost passed the controller when we got to a certain section that the person could beat. For instance, my parents could not deal with the trolls that I mentioned previously, but I flew through it flawlessly. But yeah, that's my Hobbit.
how can you talk about nostalgia without thinking back to your childhood? Because childhood is where nostalgia is born. And I've got to talk about my very first PC gaming experience. Actually, that's a lie. My first PC game was a game called Reading Rabbit. But I'm not here to talk about Reading Rabbit. I'm here to talk about Spy Fox in Dry Cereal. This game was a parody of the Bond films, where you were playing as Fox, Spy Fox. And you had assistants. You had Monkey Penny, the monkey who was like your guy in a chair, if you want to reference Spider-Man with Ned. And you had Professor Duck, who would provide you with your gadgets. That was basically Q from the Bond movies. And the main villain of this game was a goat. And the game is called Spy Fox in Dry Cereal because the goat was trying to get rid of all the cows and get rid of all the cow's milk, so that way the entire world's milk supply would go to the goats. And so everything would basically be goat milk instead of cow milk. He wanted to get a monopoly on the milk industry for some reason.
That's nasty. Can you imagine goat milk and cereal?
I know, so chunky.
Ugh.
And yeah, I remember the very start of the game, you would parachute. Well, you would jump out of a plane without a parachute, and you had these 4 pens in your jacket pocket that you would have to pull out and try and activate as the gadgets. And it was just a random guess. Sometimes you would click the pen and you would get it the first time. Sometimes you would click it and it would be like, oops, it's an anvil. I don't need that. So it was all very jokey and very much in the style of the Monkey Island games, where it was a point-and-click adventure. Because this Spy Fox game was in the form of, like, it was made by the same people, I should say, that made the Putt-Putt games, the Freddy Fish, and Pajama Sam. So, that's my Foxy nostalgia.
On similar vein to your Spy Fox, I have one as well. Timon and Pumbaa's Jungle Games.
I can't say I've heard of this one.
This, for those watching, was one of those old, like, mid-90s, early 2000s cereal box games. If you remember when General Mills and companies like that used to do that. Kids buy a box of cereal and tons of games. I remember several Tonka games.
Yep.
But Timon and Pumbaa, the Jungle Games, stood out to me. I played that so much as a kid. And probably if I went back and played it now, I don't know if there's copies anywhere. But it was a very difficult game as a kid. But apparently I like to torture myself. And it was quite enjoyable. So the game came with, essentially it was just 5 mini games centered around Timon and Pumbaa and a few other jungle animals from The Lion King. Those game modes included pinball, a burper, which is like a shooter type game, hippo hop, which was basically Frogger, bug drop, which was designed to be kind of like Poro Poro, and then a game called Sling Shooter, which was actually, you could play that in the actual main menus. Now, this game came out in 1995, but a couple years later, they did end up releasing it on the Super NES.
Oh.
But my experience is back on Windows 98 computer, so long time ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know, you talking about that game brought memories rushing back to me being a kid. It wasn't that game. There was actually remember when Stuart Little 2 came out? Like the movie?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, there was a cereal box game around that time. I don't remember if it was Stuart Little or Stuart Little 2, but it was in a box of Cheerios, but not Honey Nut Cheerios. It was just plain Cheerios.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And I really wanted it. And I convinced my mom. I was like, Mom, I want Cheerios. Oh, you don't like Cheerios. You like Honey Nut Cheerios. No, I like plain Cheerios. They're so good. Just to get the game. And I ate that box of Cheerios. I hated it. It was awful. To my little kid tongue who was used to eating Cinnamon Toast Crunch and like the Reese's Peanut Butter Ball cereal. But man, that has unlocked memories for me.
It seems, that's just exactly what I feel. Every time I see little snippets of any cereal box game, but particularly this one,
Right.
Man, it hits me right back to when, I was like 5 years old. And yeah, just like you said, going back, trying to get a specific box of cereal that you may not like, but it's got a game you want.
That's right.
Anyway, that's my number 2, Timon and Pumbaa's Jungle Games.
First player to run out of space in the storage logger loses. Tell him how that feels, Timon. That's it. That was the last straw. Come on, Pumbaa. Let's see who's the better bug dropper. Last one up the...
You know, when thinking about nostalgia, you typically don't think of a sequel as being the most nostalgic game. I mean, I guess I did when I mentioned Spider-Man 2 earlier, but that game is elevated up on a pedestal. It's usually thought of the exception when it comes to sequels. But this next game is the sequel to Star Wars Battlefront. That's right, talking Star Wars Battlefront 2, the classic version, the 2003? 2005. So yeah, Battlefront 2, 2005. Now that we're cutting back into place. So, yeah. Star Wars Battlefront 2 is a game that I played so much. It's probably the game that I put the most hours into as a kid. And when I say that, I mean, I think I had like 400 hours on this game easily, which is impressive for a ostensibly single-player game. I especially love playing the Galactic Conquest mode, where you would go over, like, I would always either play as the clones or the rebels, sometimes the Empire, never the Separatists. I hated playing as the droids. Because the droids aren't people, I didn't feel an emotional connection to them when I played as them, so I was like, yeah, why do I want to keep these guys alive? You know?
Oh man, I'm the opposite. I love the droids.
So, you would have made a great playing partner back in the day for some 1v1s in that game then.
You know what? I agree with you. That Star Wars Battlefront 2 is an unbelievable game. Unbelievable.
Honestly, the original is better than the one that came out a few years ago by EA by a mile.
100%.
The only thing the new one has going for it is its graphics, honestly.
The amount of times going over to a friend's place and doing those big hero battles on
Tatooine, yeah.
Tatooine, the Cantina band going on. You got the Yoda running around doing his thing, and
yeah,
I hate Yoda.
And I always hated how Anakin was on the villain team for that.
Yeah, it didn't make sense, did it?
I mean, yeah, because for 90 or I guess 80% of the original, not of the original, of the prequel trilogy. Oh geez, now the Star Wars fans are going to be after me. But I almost called the prequels the original. But for about 80% of the prequels, Anakin was a good guy. So, but
just be clear, Star Wars fans, I am not associated with him at all. Just go ahead and crucify him, not me.
Hey, you're not even a Star Wars fan.
This is true.
Star Wars fans, get them.
It's an amazing game. The multiplayer alone, of course, the story is fantastic. As you go through the battles, the space battles. Don't forget about the space battles.
I spent so much time just doing stunts in the space battles. Like I would get in the little tiny fighter ship, like the one that was based off of Anakin's fighter in Episode 3, and there was this little tiny gap in the Republic cruiser, that you could like navigate your ship through, like trying to go fast. I mean, I crashed 9 times out of 10 trying to do it, but it was still so much fun. And my clearest memory playing that is playing it on the planet Magito. That's the one that's kind of snowy, and it's like a lot of gray, but the map was balanced so that the clones, which is what I usually played as, that the clones had like a massive advantage on it for some reason. And I would always just get Kiadi Mundi super early and just slaughter legions of droids. It was a fun level. Great game.
They don't make games like that anymore.
They should.
They should.
But if they made that game now, they would charge you a whole bunch of money to just play as Darth Vader, right? EA?
You know, all these talks of nostalgic games, Matt, doesn't compare to one game.
One game?
The game that birthed an entire genre, that changed the course of games, and that is Doom.
Rip and tear, baby.
First released in 1993. It's a long time ago. This
Before
game,
we were born.
yeah, way before. This game kind of it set the precedent. People will probably argue that it was the original Wolfenstein that kind of birthed the first-person genre, but Doom took it and went to Mars with it. Literally went to Mars with it. Of course, he plays Doom guy, going around slaughtering demons. But we can't talk about the history of Doom without the backing soundtrack of that game.
Oh, the
my
music is
God.
incredible.
When that first E1M1 hits you, and you start running around, and you hear the demons screaming, you hear the gunshots going off. Even as you take damage, the screams that BJ Blazkowicz lets out, or Doom guy, sorry, wrong game.
It's okay, they're all linked.
Yeah, they're all kind of linked. It kind of brings out a visceral reaction. And I remember, this is the first game I ever experienced as a child. I was 4 years old.
Oh.
And he made me thinking, wow, that is a very violent game for a 4-year-old. My parents were cool, okay? I remember shoveling in a blizzard for about 2 hours and going inside, and I heard this loud shotgun sound go off that was completely foreign to me. I didn't know what a shotgun was. And the sound of like some horrible, like demented screaming, and it scared me. And I was like, what is that? And my dad's like, oh, that's my screensaver, if you remember those.
Oh, I remember screensavers.
And I was like, what? And you're Doom? What's Doom? And he's like, let me show you. And so he sat me down at the Windows 98 computer, or 95, I can't remember at the time. But sat down, showed me Doom, and my life changed.
Changed
I was
instantly.
It instantly changed.
Back hunched, eyesight got worse.
Yep. I went from, Doom to Quake to so many other games. And you can see that through the history of Doom. It propelled itself to another level. Inspired basically every FPS game to this day. Because if there wasn't Doom, there's the argument that another game could have came along and made it, but I don't think they could have made it quite like Doom. So, rip and tear, baby. That's
Rip and tear.
my number 3 entry.
When you were talking about Doom,
Yeah.
that made me think about my first childhood game,
Yeah, what was it?
And, well, we'll get to that. But I wasn't there killing demons. And honestly, now that I think about it, I think playing this game might be my first memory.
Wow.
Like I think I gained consciousness while playing this game with my dad. And to give you some backstory for this, we used to live in the basement apartment of our house, and we rented the upstairs of the house to seniors. Like, so it was kind of like a senior complex almost. And we just lived down in the basement, and it was fine. And we had this fairly small CRT TV and Nintendo Entertainment System. And almost every night, my dad would get home from work, me and my mom and my dad would sit on the couch, and we would play Lolo, The Adventures of Lolo. This is a game that you play as like a little blue dot, and he's trying to climb to the top of a tower to rescue a pink dot who is his girlfriend. And as you're climbing the tower, like going to each floor, you had to solve some incredibly complex puzzles for my little 3 or 4-year-old brain, however old I was at the time. Maybe even younger, I don't know. Maybe even 2. Jeez. Like I said, this is some of my earliest memories. And you had the ability, sometimes you could shoot out these orbs that would turn enemies into statues that you could then push to block other enemies in. And I remember, me and my dad would be there, like, drawing little diagrams on pieces of paper to try and figure out different routes through the levels that we could take, because this is back in the days when you couldn't just instantly restart the level. You had lives. You had 3 lives to clear this game in. And if you failed, you would have to start back from the beginning of the whole stage of the game. And each stage had like 4 or 5 levels in it, sometimes more. And, of course, when you had to finish playing for the night, you had to get to a stage transition because it would give you a code that you could write down and put into the game. Because this is way before autosaving. So, while you were there ripping and tearing demons, I was in the basement solving puzzles.
Those little games, man. The difficulty is just on another level.
Oh,
There's a reason why you think back to some of your favorite games as a child, and you're like, man, that one level's really hard. And it's like, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Because there was no saves.
Exactly. And the thing is, when you were a kid, you could put the time in to do the level 100 times. I don't have time to do that anymore.
Exactly.
If I want to...
There was no guides.
Exactly.
You couldn't go to the internet and search up a guide.
If you wanted a guide, you had to go into your local game store and buy like a Nintendo Power magazine or like a game guide, whatever it was called.
Yeah, it would be part of like buying the game right at the store. It might come in like the little booklet that comes with the game.
Yeah. And fun fact about Lolo, if any of you want to try it, it's actually, you can get it for free on the Nintendo Switch online store in the little NES bundle that you can get on there. So go ahead and give it a shot. Let's make Nintendo make a Lolo 3. Make Lolo 3. Make Lolo 3.
Make Lolo 3. I've never played it, but make Lolo 3.
Make Lolo 3 so I can have more bonding time with my parents.
Oh, that's such awful.
Please.
Feels bad, man. He needs out of the basement.
No, we need to go back to the...
Need to be... He's been shackled for so long.
We need to go back to the basement and play Lolo 3.
Okay, we need to unshackle Sparrow, drag him out of the basement, and stick you back in.
That's right, we gotta drag him out of retirement.
I was talking about Doom. And before Doom, I did mention about a game called Wolfenstein.
That you did?
Well, after Wolfenstein 3D came out, and then Doom and Quake and all those games, there was another Wolfenstein game that came out in 2001. And that game was Return to Castle Wolfenstein.
I'm familiar.
Now, this game, even to this day, I will play runs of this game. You mentioned 300 to 400 hours, even as a kid.
Yeah.
It's got to be close for me. I think right now on Steam, I don't want to misquote myself, but it's probably sitting at like at least 150, 200, and that's just now. That doesn't account to all the runs I had
Yeah, it's just a couple.
like 20 years ago. So everywhere, and like just the aesthetic and the start, the cinematography. This game set the precedent for what games like Call of Duty and Medal of Honor would become. This is really the first World War II first-person shooter that kind of took on the kind of cinematics storyline kind of thing. You play as BJ Blazkowicz, and the game is really cool. You start right off in prison of Castle Wolfenstein, and you have nothing more than a pistol and a knife. And you have to eventually break out of Wolfenstein Castle. And just, it takes you on this journey, man, from the castle to, you end up going through the streets of, I believe it's Germany.
I
A
mean,
little while.
there's quite a few Nazis around, so it's probably Germany.
Yeah, so Germany and then the catacombs. Oof. Let me tell you, as a child, nothing was more terrifying than going in those catacombs and having to deal with the weird Viking skeletons with swords and these like flaming guys that would shoot skulls at you. Man. I get right in my feels when I think about this game, how much it means to me. This is another one of those games that my parents and I played together a lot, and it was trading sections. So, you know, my mom could handle the undead catacombs part. The SS women. I can't wait for you to cut to the SS women in this game. Those friggin' things. My God.
Man, now that you said it, you're making work for me having to find specific clips.
The people need to see. They, especially on the harder difficulties, were so frustrating. Which is why my dad could just breeze through it. He was great at it. These, they come equipped with stens, and like they would kill you in like 2 seconds with them seeing you. It was insane. And then even going into the experimental factory, where you run into just horrible creations from S-Head, the main antagonist in the game. But it even carried a multiplayer, and that multiplayer had a spin-off with Return to Castle Wolfenstein Enemy Territories, I believe it's called. At the time, didn't really have the internet for it, so I didn't get to experience it. But from other people I've talked to, it was an incredible multiplayer, and it's right up there with like Call of Duty multiplayer. And so, yeah, that is my number 4 game, Return to Castle Wolfenstein. Well, if we forgot any games, or you think any games belong in this list, leave a comment. Tell us what we missed.
Yell at us a whole bunch. And if you have lots, maybe we'll make a commenter edition of this list. One day. And I think that leaves just one thing left to say.
Yep.
And that's ba-da-da-ba-da-bye.